would
This
like to
conference will now be recorded.
Actually listen to people, listen to others who have gone through similar experiences, especially when it comes to running, but generally in life as well. That hopefully we can all learn from, or hopefully at least in some cases we can try to even emulate. So from a running perspective, I would just want to say, like, I started running when I was in my late 30s. I mean, I should say marathons per se. I started running a little before that. Subconsciously, probably the reason was my brother getting diabetic at a very young age. He was just 4 years. He is 4 years older than me, and he got diabetic probably, I think, in the early 30s, and that kind of gave me a little bit of a scare. I mean, not just that, my doctor also gave me a scare that I better do something about it. Otherwise, I'll end up being a diabetic as well. So that was the trigger point for me to do something, and I found this, running to be a good segue from that bother. And also, my then boss was a marathon runner, so he actually inspired me to run as well. So that's there you have it. And then I ran. I kept running like like Forrest Gump, with no means or no end or no goals. But then to motivate yourself, you probably have to. I mean, we all have been there, where at some point we all want to motivate ourselves to go beyond where we are, because it becomes a rut otherwise. So that's where I started running marathons, because there is a goal then. I mean, there is a distance you have to complete. There is something you have to accomplish to do this. Even though it's a passion, it's not easy for you to just get up and get out the door every day. So that's how I started running marathons, and that was in 2006, my first marathon. That was in the US. I was living in the US at the time, and then I came back to India in 2008. And since then, I've been running on and off, and through a few of other passionate nutcases like the two that you're seeing on the screen with me. We all started this crazy group called Souls of Cochin, and we've been doing what we all love to do, which is passionate mindless running since then, and mindless propagation of running, and propagation of the joy of running. So that's about me, and the history of Souls of Cochin in a way. And over to Vijayan next, I guess.
Good evening, guys. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, guys. I think the story is not much different, but in the sense, the running. I mean, I always had a liking for probably the outdoor activities. Trekking in the mountains was an activity during slightly younger days. And as life moved on, the young family demanded more time, and trekking activities actually came to a halt. And the free time was mostly spent at the watering holes. Rather, an opportunity was never missed. I would say, well, it was a routine such until Rajesh and Santosh, friends from TCS, invited my office guys. They came there and invited us for the TCS Fit for Life challenge. Most of the Cochin guys actually started their running. I don't know, I mean, except Ramesh and few others, but there are many in Cochin who have started running with this TCS challenge. And then it was a 5-mile race. Few of us, including my close buddy Naushad, we trained for it by running a 5K training run, and then we dragged our bodies to the finish line on the event day. Well, next day the body was tired, but I guess the soul got a good massage. We registered for the Mumbai half marathon and started training for it, though we did not have any idea on how to do about it. Now, the time was this. That was about the time when the souls was taking shape, and we met this group. I mean, through the online platforms, and then the training runs became more of fun. And then I never knew when these half marathons turned into marathons and ultra marathons running with the group. I can only find just one plausible explanation for why I continued running after the first 5-miler. At about 40 years of age. I had been in government service for around 20 years, married for around 13 years, the father of a 12-year-old girl. I had a house of my own, almost everything an ordinary human being needed. settled into a nice relationship with the people around me. Yes, I did have a liking for the puff and the peg. More importantly, I had a lot of time at my disposal. I was finding joy running. Benefits poured in. I made a lot of new friends outside my office circle, met and interacted with people from different spheres of life, and it sure gave me a better understanding of the world around me. It was just opening up new horizons, and sure, it did help me understanding the person standing on the other side of the table at my office. I am a government service. Health wise, yes, I did lose some extra flap, quit smoking altogether. Free time was more an opportunity to do some exercise or to go out for a run rather than looking for like-minded people to join me at the bar. And 2014, Souls of Cochin had thought of organizing an event, a marathon in Cochin, and I just could fit myself to volunteer to help in the organizing the event. And was proud of the fact that I was part of the team, that the team SCM, and we got to organize one of the most loved runner-friendly events in the country. We would like to believe that. And we believe, we at Souls believe that we are responsible for bringing about a running boom in the city of Cochin and state of Kerala with our passionate effort over the past 6 years. And then the Souls of Cochin used to go together for events at various locations. It was always fun to motivate each other, run, finish, irrespective of the fact that we were running our own event. And I've always believed, running marathon events always embodied the famed Olympic spirit, which just means it is more of it is more the effort that was valuable rather than the finish line. And I think it is just the finish line of the marathon is the best place where you can actually see the Olympic spirit in action. And then I can probably relate of various events running with friends, at trail events where you get tired, drop out almost on the verge of dropping out of the event, and then somebody comes in, passes by you and says, come on, yes, we'll just walk till the next loop and maybe the next kilometer, and then on, and we have finished events together. I can name umpteen number of peoples, maybe Surendu, Thomas, Appu, Nausha. These are all people with whom I have who had helped me, where I've dropped almost on the verge of dropping out, and then they just pushed me. And I cannot probably help forget the help rendered by Apurva and Abhinav, from the musket runners, while I was stuck in middle of nowhere while running the Malnad Ultra last year. So I think these are the things which brings me back to the running event again and again, despite the fact that the body is tired. And the other day, the Viju was asking me about whether DNFs affect you. Viju knows that I've got 2 DNFs at the recently. One was the Oman event and the Deccan Ultra, and I still believe that they were the best ultras that I have participated in. I DNF because the training was not up to the desired levels. It is just that the struggle that gives me the joy more than the win. I would like to come back and finish both these events, at some point. And what else? Another thing is most of you have seen me at the face as of at Vagaman making the announcements, and so I would like to take this opportunity to invite you as many of you have come there, but I would invite you all again in the coming years as well. So that's it. I think over to Appu.
Okay, so and my story is kind of different. So I was still 30. I didn't have any health issues. I didn't have time because I was working in a hospital and doing alternate nights. But then I was in it was a very remote place, a rural place in Tamil Nadu when I started running. It actually started as a complement to, or let's say to improve my stamina while I was playing badminton. Then I got the very first run of mine, I got injured. A friend of mine said I had a stress fracture. He put me in a cast, and I was in a cast for 2 weeks after my very first run. Of course, I think I was misdiagnosed. Anyways, so after that, it took a while to come back. I started playing badminton again, so wanted to improve my stamina. Went back for my run, and because I didn't have a group or nothing to assess myself, I thought running 1 kilometer was like a big achievement, and I stopped at that. If I reached 2, that was like too much for me at that point. And that kind of continued for the first few years, because there's nothing to judge. There's nobody to compare to for me. As in, I was always running alone. It was usually post work, and if I run 3 or 4 kilometers, that was it. If I ran 8, that was like a long run for me at that point. That kind of continued, and then every rainy season I'd stop for like 4 or 5 months, then start again, quit again. So that went on for like 4 or 5 years before I finally decided one day that I'm going to start. I registered for a full marathon, started training, and when I started training, one day I saw a bunch of people running in the nearby stadium, and I was wondering who these people are. And then very soon I found out there is a group called Souls in Cochin, who I somehow missed in the first few months of their running. But then I joined, and then that was it. That I started running. That's it. For me, I don't do a lot of events. I don't get, basically events take a lot of training. So that kind of, with a very young family and work that requires at least 2 nights a week, I can't do events. But so usually I do an event or two a year. So last few years it's been the Malnad Ultra, and one UTMB. That's all I do. Occasionally I do a half. I kind of realized I've not done a full marathon as an event for a long time, but I do run fulls in training. That's what I do. Anyway, that's about me. Okay, as such, I should talk a bit about my profession. I am a orthopedic surgeon. I work in a sports injury joint replacement unit. But I have to say that running has taught me as much about our body as the textbooks have taught me, and that is one advantage I've had in my life. Okay, that's me.
Well, thanks for the nice introduction, three of you, and I really appreciate that. But we would have certain questions before we get into the real question to ask. I would like to ask Ramesh about which is his favorite marathon, and what was your biggest achievement? Like, what is the time taken for the marathon?
You mean like my fastest versus favorite? I mean, my fastest is definitely not my favorite.
And one is your fastest, because people wanted to know. Already I'm getting the question saying that how do I qualify for Boston also? So I thought that question will come in. So we would like to know more about which is your favorite marathon, and what was your best timing which you had for the fastest marathon which you are run, whichever it is.
Okay, well, the favorite is a tie between Boston and Big Sur. Boston is definitely a great place, not just because you have to qualify or anything, just because of the fact that it is a celebration by the city. I mean, the city of Boston. It's almost like Thanksgiving in the U.S., where families come in, or Christmas, where when families come in and join together and celebrate. Boston Marathon is like that for it. The residents of the cities or the towns that the marathon goes through, and it is actually from a little town called Hopkinton. That's exactly 26.2 miles from, which is 42.2 kilometers from Boston downtown, and it passes through a bunch of villages, or I should say towns. In their standards, it's all villages, but basically every single town has a character, and they bring out thousands of people. I mean, there'll be hardly like 10 meters where you can't find a big crowd cheering for you. And it is, by far the best marathon for an experience to run, in my opinion. But then when I ran Big Sur Marathon, why I said it's a tie between that and Big Sur in California is that Big Sur is one of the most scenic marathons you would run. I mean, road marathon. For a road marathon, it is extremely scenic. You have Pacific Ocean on one side, and really steep mountains on the other side. So you're sort of running on an edge of a sort of like a ravine, and it's an extremely uplifting experience. It's a very hilly race. It's very tough, but just the scenery takes you. I mean, I'm usually not a person who spends a lot of time looking at the scenery. Like a lot of people have asked me, like, you know, oh yeah, this run have you run, and what a beautiful run that is. And usually I don't see anything. When I start running, I just go into a Zen mode, I guess, and I run, and I don't see a whole lot of sceneries or locations or roads the route where you go through. I can't remember a thing at the end of the race. I can't remember which all landmarks we went through or anything. But Vixar is slightly different in that, because it takes you through that experience. So those are the two of my favorite races. If you ask me, like, if I would like to run them again, yes, by far they are the most favorite. And then my best was in Dubai, which is definitely not my favorite run, but it is a good run, as in, like, it is a flat course. It's a fast course, but that's about it. I mean, that's all what you can say about the race itself. And it was 3 hours 2 minutes was my time, and that was in 2016. Since then, I've been trying to better my time, but just like everyone else, everybody wants to get a PB in every race or every run. It's a challenge. I mean, I'm not getting any younger, so it's a bigger challenge because of that. So that's about it. That's a long answer to your short question, Vijayan.
No, I have one more question in that. How did you qualify for Boston?
Well, that's well, basically, you have to you have to look for your time in your age group. You have a specific time. I qualified the first time in 2009 at the Walt Disney Marathon in Florida. It was my time was 3:09, 3 hours and 9 minutes, and the qualification time at the time for my age was 3:15. So I had qualified, and interestingly, I mean, to see the growth of running worldwide, that's a good indicator, because Walt Disney Marathon was in January, and I finished that race, and I signed up for Boston the next day, which was in the April of the same year. Whereas now, you can't sign up for Boston in January. Boston opens up its registration in a small window of about 3 weeks, I think 3 or 4 weeks in September of the previous year. So you have to basically have qualified before September, and you have to sign up during that time. So if you qualify for Boston after September, you're only qualified for the following year, basically. So it is how I qualified was, you basically try to, I mean, I guess part of this discussion will probably come to some of those things about running faster, running, maybe strategies and tactics that one employs to run faster. But that's basically it. I mean, you just have to dedicate a little time, initially at least. The first time when you don't know, the unknown is big, right? Whether you'll be able to qualify, you don't know that. But once you qualify, it's easy. The things get a lot easier, because you're actually able to replicate and improve upon your own techniques, and you can definitely go qualify for further years somewhat easier. But to qualify, basically you get your speed work, your tempo runs, your long runs, all of those standard things that you do for training for your whichever race it is. You do those 3 basic required or necessary workouts to get there, and then along with that you do your strengthening and stretching and everything else. So that's the answer.
Good, but we would like to know one more thing, that what inspired you to become a barefoot runner, which is very rare, or which is very unique, that everybody can't do. Even if I try to do it, my legs started getting some kind of blisters or whatever it is. I am not able to. Many of us are new runners here. which was when we read that Barefoot Runner from you, we all have a question to ask you. What inspired you to become a barefoot runner, and how did you train for to become a barefoot runner?
Well, the quick answer to it is, I became a barefoot runner, frankly, for no reason. As in, I did not have injuries or any particular reason to drive myself to barefoot running. It was one of those things that I just wanted to try out, and I loved it when I did. So it was basically just a matter of chance that I became a barefoot runner. But once I did, there was no going back, because it was, yeah, you have to be a little persistent. I mean, yeah, the blisters, they do come. I mean, I did get blisters in the initial days, but then the blisters for barefoot running, we call them battle scars. They're not something to be scorned at. I mean, they're actually something that you wear proudly initially, at least, because after some time they go away and they become calluses, and they become your feet become stronger. So bottom line is, you have to be persistent if you want to be a barefoot runner. But then, like you said, barefoot running is definitely not for everybody. I mean, at least pure barefoot running is definitely not for everybody. But the fact is, there is a good chance. I mean, this is something that Appu can probably validate for me. If you are a natural midfoot striker, there is a good chance that you will get there through barefoot running. As in, we all use shoes from our childhood, and we have forgotten how to run, or in a subconscious way, we have forgotten how to run with striking with our midfoot, or striking with our on the ball of our feet. So because of that, we actually expect something on our heel. So when we wear our shoes, what naturally happens is, shoes kind of force you to strike heels first. So when you do the heel first striking, I mean, you can see the impact is directly, like that. When you hit like that, the impact is directly on your joints, on your ankles, on your knees, on your hips. But whereas when you strike like this, and you distribute your body weight a little bit, I don't know if you can see, but when you strike a little towards your front of your toe, or front of your foot, and you roll your foot in such a way that the body weight is a little more distributed, the chances are that you are saving your joints and actually putting pressure on your muscles, which is the right way to do any activity, where you use your muscles instead of your joints and your smaller and softer tissues to do your activity. So that's basically what it was. I think. I mean, I believe that theory, because there are some researches, but I don't think there's anything conclusive. So that's what I've been telling Appu. I can be a subject. I can be one of the subjects, but if somebody is doing any research, because I've run over 23,000 kilometers recently. I just checked recently. I've run over 23,000 kilometers just pure barefoot. I mean, with not even like Vibrams or any shoes under any type of shoes under my feet. So it is something that I would like to see, like studied in the long term. People do research in a short term. The sample size may be bigger, but they only research maybe for about 6 months. But I've been running barefoot for almost 10 years now. 2010 is when I started. So 10 years, 23,000 kilometers. So I have a fairly good, data that I can share with somebody who's doing some research on this. And I can be a subject for that. So barefoot running, as I said, it's not for everybody, because some people are probably compulsive heel strikers no matter what. In such cases, may not work that well. But even that, I mean, there is a good chance that it could get corrected, and you might actually become. I mean, now I don't know if the theory that midfoot striking is the best thing in the world, but there is. From my experience, there is a good chance that you will save a lot of injuries if you do that.
Good. In fact, I go to beach, then only I do this barefoot walking or running. It's nice and very inspiring to hear your story of barefoot running. Can I ask you one more question, if you don't mind? Like, would it increase your pace and endurance when you are running on your barefoot or with shoe? Which one was better for you, or what do you think about it?
Well, I haven't totally researched on that to that level, but the fact is, my current PB is on a Barefoot Run in Dubai. But when I run, I mean, there is some research out there which says a very slight, very slight cushioning is actually good for you to run faster. So there is, I mean, I don't know the validity of that, but I think it is probably true. I mean that there is probably a slight push you get with a slight bit of cushioning, because you can pretty much go all out without a bother of what you're stepping on, right? So that is you can, when you're running a road race, you can pretty much go full blown if you have something to protect your feet. If you are barefoot, if you're totally barefoot, you are a little cautious. So that probably slows you down a tad bit, I think. But that being said, I think not having that extra weight on your foot actually helps with barefoot running, in my opinion. So that is the every single ounce of weight matters when you're trying to shave off like a few seconds of your time. So that's my answer.
That's nice, Ramesh. And then we'll get into now with Vijay. Vijay, first of all, let me understand from you, which is your favorite ultra?
Sorry?
Which is your favorite ultra?
Well, the ones which I have DNF'd.
Oh my God.
Those were really challenging ones. I've done Malnad many times, but to me the favorite one was still it's still the UTMB and the Deccan Ultra, because they did challenge you enough. So I would say they are my favorite ultras.
How did you move from a road running to ultra running, and what interest it got generated in you, saying that ultra is better, or ultra is your another passion?
I really don't know answer to that question, but it's just started off by, I think rather than starting ultras, I started trail running first. As I said, I did have a liking for trekking and being in the mountains. Probably when this thing called there was an event which was organized by the Chennai Trekking Club, and Matthew had come down here. And he said, let us go there and participate. And then that's how we went to Chennai to participate in the Chennai Trail Marathon. And when that happened, that was the first event which I did, and that happened to be an ultra trail event. And that probably because I loved these trekking and had this trekking experience, there was an instant connect which I could get with these trails and the and most of the trails were ultras. And therefore it just went on from Chennai to Javadu to Malnad, and from there on, and then then came our own course in Vagaman, and it just kept on. So that's all.
Which is the longest distance you have done in ultra?
The longest which I've done is rather finished is 130, which is the Kodai Ultra. But it was not kind of a trail. Trail ultra. It is hardly around 10 to 15% of trail. Most of it was road. But again, it was good event. There were few trail stretches which were challenging. But the Kodai Ultra is the longest one which I did.
Could we know how much time it would have taken?
24 hours.
Okay. So 24 hours, how did you spend? Can you just, in brief, can you explain for our people?
It just started off. The race starts, and those trails. I love sleeping in between.
Okay.
In between trail runs. So I was just done around 30-40. I'm just going out. I'm not a very fast runner. I was just ambling along and around about 30-40, and I was dead tired. I didn't know what to do, so I just slept on the pavement somewhere on the side of some Kodai highway. And then somebody comes me. I think it was Thomas Habel from Chennai. He came in and he says, let us go together for the next till the next aid station, and he pulled me. It was a downhill, road, went brought me down to the next aid station. I had the curd rice, which was a good source of energy. And then the trail started downhill, which was again trails. Downhill trails are what I love the most. I love downhills. I love trails. So I think that was a kind of a push which I required. And by the time I completed that trail loop, it was almost 50, 60. So, and then I got another group from the CTC. We just ran together for till the finish, and that's how I just did it. In between, I just slept at a few aid stations and had enough of food. So that's it.
Okay, it's really nice to know that you had run for 24 hours, and it's going to be an inspiration for all of us. And which trail would you suggest for our people who are just at the entry level?
Sorry?
Which trail would you suggest for our people who are just into running?
Well, it's a difficult question. I think the Malnad, the earlier one, not the last year's Malnad, but the course before that was a good trail to run. But now they've made it slightly tougher. But I think you can come to Vagaman anytime. Run. We have, I think last year there was a kind of a smaller event as well for people who are going to start off. There was a fun run, kind of a 33K fun run.
Yes.
It's a new definition of fun run was there, and I mean, trails are all. I wouldn't say which. I don't know which trail you like, because there are different sort of trails. There are trails which are absolutely flat, like you find it in Hellur Trail, which is a trail, but it's a loop. It's a loop of 5 kilometers, and you keep on running on the same loop for around 24 or 48 hours. But if you love flat trails and you just want to do it for the sake of doing a trail, I think Hennur is good. But if you really want to challenge yourself, go to the elevations and things like that. I think the events organized by the by the grid team in India, they're all real challenging events. Vagaman is good. Malnad, I think this year they're bringing out some new course. So these are all events which I've gone and I feel are good events.
Okay. You suggest Vagaman Ultra 33, but already one of our runner Machu had already run that 33, and 60 entry level we should try. Thank you, Vijayan. Then there is one question for you, which people ask that why did you move from, or why did you focus more on long distance running than on flat trails, fast running, speed running?
I think it's just for the liking. There's no particular reason. See, as I said, I do love trekking and mountains. And I think it's just a personal choice that I just love those kind of courses. So, and we have in Kerala is there are a lot of places where you can go to the mountains and run, walk yourself, climb. And there are opportunities are there. So
Are you planning for comrades?
Sorry?
Are you planning for comrades?
Not really. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. I would love to do UTMB someday. The UTMB which is done in France someday. But for that, I'll have to first finish off the Oman one. So let's see if the event happens this year. I would like to join, finish it off, and then maybe attempt the UTMB. And then maybe let's see. I mean, comrades has actually never come into my mind. I actually don't know much about comrades as well.
Okay. So you are welcome to UTMB Oman. We will host you here. You all are welcome, Souls of Cochin. And
well, I think I'll have to thank you all for the excellent hospitality that was extended to me and Appu last time you were there. I mean, you particularly, because we stayed at your place, but I think we never knew that we never thought that we were at a different place. We were just taken around by you guys wherever we wanted, and thank you. The Musket.
RK and Vijay. Okay, now we'll get into the more of technicality of running. Like people are all looking for flat foot questions, and there are some footwear questions. So let's hear from Appu. What would he suggest as a runner to start with? What we should do and what we should not. So we would like to hear from you. I may not be able to ask you many questions, but injury, strain injury or sprain injury, or what kind of other injuries, if you can help us in answering it. Or what are your experiences of going through injuries while running?
So I've been an oft injured runner. So because one thing was when I got into running, um, so I was just going through the internet and I found this thing called Vibram Five Fingers. So the first shoe I used was actually minimalistic, and because my body was not kind of used to minimalistic footwear and running, basically not used to running, and then I started off running with minimalistic footwear. I got injured quite often initially. But one thing I can say is 99% of running injuries are not serious. As in, they don't require any sort of surgery or they don't require any long-term treatment. Most of them go away with rest. The problem with runners is because you develop that running ego, and then rest goes out of your head, and thinking of slowing down once you get to a certain pace, that also is difficult for most runners, including me. So all these things are what usually cause the injury to persevere actually. Most often, just the usual treatment that you find online called rest, ice, compression, elevation works for most injuries, and it just requires a little bit of patience, little bit of some modification in running techniques, some modification in your strengthening. You don't need a lot of strengthening unless you're planning to do some major trail event, but you do need some strengthening. You do need to do some stretching at least once or twice a week. You don't have to religiously stretch every day, but maybe 2 or 3 minutes every day, and probably 10-15 minutes a couple of times a week. Strengthening definitely helps in as in stabilizing your core, and if your core is strong, the chance of injury is less. I think it would be easier if you ask me some certain questions uh, regarding some. Are there any particular questions regarding injury or?
Yes, there is a big lot of question coming up. I was just trying to make yourself and people understand about you. Nevertheless, I'll ask you one question: is barefoot running recommended, or should I run with
Good.
shoes?
Yeah, so I'm just going to flip the camera. I was drawing something when Ramesh was talking. I don't know if you
Yes.
can see it. Let me see.
Yeah, you can show it. Go ahead.
So, okay, so on the left side where my finger is pointing, so that's
Yeah.
how you land when you wear a very thick heel shoe. Okay, or normally when people start running, that's how you land. So what happens is in a straight line. So what you can see is this is the hip. Oh, sorry, this is the hip. This is the knee. This is the ankle. What happens is force travels in a straight line when you land on the heel. Okay. So this is not about barefoot running. This is particular about running form. And what barefoot running helps you do is change this form to this, whereby your knee is bent, you land on your midfoot, and the forces don't travel in a straight line from one joint to the other. So the impacts on the joint is much lesser when you land on your midfoot. And because you're running barefoot and you're afraid, and running barefoot, it's very hard to land on your heel because it hurts. So that if you run probably once a week, if you start off running barefoot, that'll probably help you convert your hindfoot strike or your heel strike to a midfoot strike like this. So it basically takes away the impact from the joints onto your muscles. And when you move from a shoe to barefoot running, you will find that your muscles hurt a lot the first few times you run. And that's because your muscles are taking a lot more force than it would have taken when you're running with a very thick heel shoes. With the thick heel shoes, one, your heel will always touch first because there is a lot of material below your heel. The other thing is you're confident of landing without feeling the pain of landing on a heel, because the heel is a very bony structure. So this is heel landing and this is like midfoot landing. So Yeah, so barefoot running helps. The problem is because you take off shoes, you're around 500 to 700 grams lighter depending on your shoes, and that definitely helps make you faster, and that's bad. So when you move from running with a very thick shoes or a padded shoes, and when you move on to minimalistic or barefoot running, the first thing you should do is decrease your mileage, decrease your speed, and that should go on for at least 3 months, I feel, before you can go back to your old pace and old mileage. Okay.
That was very insightful. I would suggest Dr. Appu, if you can scan and send it, then I would circulate it over here for a better understanding, because the camera sometimes was going, the video was going a little lag. So I will just circulate that picture so that they will, whatever you spoke, they would have clearly they would have heard, but maybe they would have missed out on the drawing. So please send us the drawing. I will circulate in our group. Thanks a lot. And there was one question from one of our members: is barefoot running fine for a high arch foot?
I think once the good thing about minimalistic, or once you start landing on your midfoot, so essentially all this flat foot and high arch foot have problems with the heel. And once you start landing on the midfoot, and provided you don't increase your pace, you do the whole thing of decreasing your pace, decreasing your mileage, I don't think it does high arch or flat foot matter with barefoot running.
Okay, one more. Can you speak something about the flat foot, how it can create issues or how it should be resolved? Because what he has written is, being flat foot, I am more prone to injuries of calf, heel, pains, etc. And what are the do's and don'ts for a flat-footed runners?
So once again the same thing. So most flat, if you are flat foot and if you're landing on your heel, there's a chance that your heel goes outside from your leg. So that kind of can cause injuries. So many, or what you call, these are what the shoe companies call pronators, and they make support shoes for pronators. Okay. So what I find is, I found a lot of people with barefoot who have absolutely no issues. So it's not a lot of people with flat foot who have absolutely no issues while running. A couple of my friends who run in our group, they are totally flat footed, have absolutely no issues because of the flat foot. One thing again, I think injuries per se are not because of flat foot. It's mainly to do with your running cadence, running techniques, and how you land on your feet. So probably a midfoot, trying to become a midfoot striker will help such a person.
Good. So nice to know all of you, and a little bit of question. Now we will have a lot of questions. We have categorized it with beginner level. So we have a lot of beginner level. So I'll start with the beginner level. I will. This question is to our Vijayan. As someone who is not into serious running but into a regular walking, how does he shift his focus to running?
Well, easy. Walk, run. In the sense, see, I used to before starting actually running, I used to walk regularly. Every day, the morning, I used to walk around 50, at least 45 to 50 minutes. But then once running started, walking stopped. But easiest way to transit is, if you're walking, maybe while you are walking, maybe take say from the next one post to the next post, just do a small run, and then as days goes by, you can join the dots, and then your walking gradually progresses into running. But do mind in when running doesn't mean, as Appu has stated, it doesn't mean mindless, all out fast running. You just need to be slow, and key to transition is lot of patience. You need to, you might find a lot of people running faster than you, or things like that, but have patience, and things will you'll get the desired results. That's all.
Fantastic. Next is Dr. Appu. Couple of questions for you. How do we determine the right body weight to start running, and do we go by regular BMI, or is there any specific weight plan for running? Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Can you just repeat the last part of the question? Is there any specific
weight plan for running? My
okay,
body
there
weight.
is no specific body weight to start running, but lighter you are, lesser chance that you get injured. So people who are heavier should probably start off with walking. If somebody comes to me who is say BMI is classified by WHO. So anybody over 25 is classified as overweight. Anybody over 30 BMI is classified as obese. So anybody over 30, if somebody comes to me who's over 30, I'd probably ask him that to walk 5 kilometers and get used to walking before he starts running completely, and then slowly start a run walk and then start running. Probably, and as you find, weight doesn't go down very quickly initially, because initially you put on some muscle, then you lose some fat and the weight remains. So BMI doesn't change very quickly, but you still will be able to run better with the same BMI. Somebody who is really obese should probably think of only walking till he brings his weight down with some sort of diet and exercise. And anybody who's above 30 should probably think of some sort of strengthening along with running.
Okay, so this weight, the weight loss, can running bring in weight loss?
No, running alone won't bring a lot of weight loss. It will bring some weight loss. If you're going, so this thing happened to me initially. So before, when I started running, I used to start eating extra because I thought I was running a lot. And then you finally realize that when you run 10 kilometers, it's probably just one big pack of sweets away. The 10K is like running 10K calories, almost equivalent to just eating a big packet of sweets. So if you don't control your diet and just keep on mindlessly running, you're not going to lose a lot of weight, but you lose some weight initially.
Okay, great. So next, I'll ask Mr. Ramesh a question. That's again, I think it could be, if it's a repetition, I don't know. Is shoes important? And if it is so, which brand of shoe are recommended for marathon and trail running?
Well, first of all, I mean, we had a we just had a discussion on barefoot running. So, and even though I thought I could answer it, or I said I could answer it, I'm actually the wrong person to answer it anyway, because I don't run in shoes. But then again, there was a time when I used to run in shoes.
Okay.
So what I've learned from that experience is there is no one brand that is right for anybody, right, or everybody. There is, shoes. Ideally, if you are persistent on running in shoes, you probably are better off getting the right kind of shoes for you. And that can be any brand. It doesn't matter what brand it is. It can be a Mizuno, it can be a Nike, it can be an Adidas, it can be a Puma, any brand. It doesn't matter, as long as you get it fit right for your feet or for your landing, for your, like Appu said, the pronation or supination, whichever type of landing your feet do. Based on that, there are the right kind of shoes for you. So the gait analysis has to be done uh, if you're insistent on using shoes. That is, you should get your gait checked, and based on that, you can actually get the right shoes fit for you. Now, whether or not that is the right thing to do in terms of injury prevention in the long term, we still don't know. Frankly, there is a conspiracy theory against the shoe companies that it is, inside your shoes, your feet are still pronating or supinating anyway. So, how is that going to help? I mean, how is the landing alone on the ground being flat or being straight? How is that going to help if your feet are still pronating inside your shoes? So that is the big question that is out there. So that is why I keep telling people, you try everything. You try running in shoes. You also try running barefoot or in minimalist shoes, because unless you try it and find out whether you're the right person or whether it is right for you, you never know. I mean, you should not completely write it off without actually trying it. That's all. So the quick answer, the short answer to that question is there is no shoes. There is no particular shoe that is right for everyone. Every brand works provided it is the right kind of shoe for you.
Okay, thank you. Vijayan,
Yeah.
which is the best time for running? Is it morning or evening?
It's a difficult question. See, if you ask me for a preference, yes, I think mornings are better. Probably you get up, you've not had any food, and then probably it might help you in sense you might be lighter as far as your body is concerned, and might be good. But I was just going through the internet, and they say that if you're not used to getting up early in the morning on a regular basis, and if you suddenly start running, increasing your pace or things, and in the morning, it might not be a good idea. If you're and moreover, and for those in that sense, maybe the running in the evening is better, because by the time you've already got enough of energy, your food levels are higher, and they say the body temperature is higher. That's what the internet says, that your body, the core temperature of your body is higher, and therefore it is better to run in the evening. I mean, and this technical aspects, I think Appu might be the better person to answer. But for me, I think I love running in the mornings, because that gives me a fresh start to the day. Evenings, what happens is, obviously by the time the roads are polluted, there is heavy vehicle pollution, vehicles are on at a higher number, the scope of you hitting a vehicle is are more, and then you never know whether you'll be able to run in the evening, because by the time you finish your office, you might have your own things to finish off, and then you might not get time in the evening. So for me, it has always been a morning, but what the science, from whatever I've read in the internet, it says it's better to run in the evening. I think Appu can elaborate more on that.
Yes, I'm going to Appu with another question, so we will also ask him the same. Appu, you have a very specific question, that is, how many kilometers or the number of times a person at his 50 can run? And what are the adverse effects? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think it's whether you're 50, 40, 30 or 20, I think you shouldn't run more than 4 or 5 times a week. I think you start off with 3, probably do 4, and I think whoever you are, I think you should stick to 5 times a week. And 2 days you find, if you can't sit at home, go for a walk, go cycling, do strengthening, do something that is something other than running for a bit. And probably one day don't do anything at all. Body needs time to recover.
Okay.
But then there are people who.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go on. No, I said there are people who can run 7 days a week. Everybody is different. Probably if you've been running for a long time and you know your body really well, you can probably increase pace and do more. But at the beginning, whoever you are, I think not more than 4 days or 5 at the max.
Will running cause any adverse effect to the heart? And what are the precautions, or how do we care ourselves?
Yeah, so there are a lot of studies done that show that running causes a slight increase in the size of the muscles in the heart. Most of it is temporary, but then if you're going to do a lot of high intense training, that can in the long run be problematic. So essentially, it's the same for injury or heart or legs or muscles. You should start slow, build up your mileage slowly, build up your distance slowly, build up the kind of events you do slowly. So if you're going to aim for a sub 4 or 3.5 hour marathon in the first 6 months of your running, you're going to cause a lot of strain on your legs, muscles, heart, and every other part of your body. So key to doing something for a long time is to gradually build it up and not try to improve your time for every possible run. A lot of people who want to improve their time in every possible practice run, and that is probably one of the worst things to do.
Okay. So to Ramesh, how running helps us to increase the life expectancy.
Before I answer that, I probably should touch upon the 2 points that were asked to Vijayan and Appu. One is one is the morning versus the evening run. I think there are 2 things that stand out. One is just as Vijayan said, if you run in the morning, it's done away with. That activity is done away with, and you don't have that uncertainty of whether or not you will be able to complete the run in the evening. And so it is, in my opinion, ideal to run in the morning, because we all have our lives. We all, have our unknowns about the day, about our family, or about what happens during, the rest of the day. So we don't have sometimes you don't have a control of that. Whereas in the morning, you do have a little more control of your life, because you can get up earlier and you can probably go before your family wakes up. You're probably back home. So that is one argument for doing a run in the morning. The second thing is about what you're training for. If you're training for a particular race, it's probably a good idea to run at the same time as the race is actually happening. So in similar conditions as the race. So for example, if you're running for a night ultra or something like that, then yeah, ideally you should run in the evening and probably at night. But if you're knowing that most of our races that we run are in the morning, it's probably best to run in the morning as well. So that is one aspect. And the second aspect about on a second question that we had asked Appu is also about the heart thing. I think for any beginner, it's probably a good idea to get a cardiac evaluation before you start serious running. Get an ECG, get something that actually confirms that you don't have a problem. Because if you have a congenital or a pre-existing problem, then running might actually accentuate it. Doing extensive or intense running might actually accentuate it, and that is why this whole myth about marathon causes cardiac arrest. There's some about people dying while they're running a marathon and stuff like that. That's all because they all have pre-existing conditions which have been unchecked. And so ideally, now whether or not blood vessel blockage can be identified prior to an event, it's probably an impossibility. But at least if you have some other problem, like if you have a cardiac murmur or an arrhythmia or some level of ECG variation or something, you might be able to find that during a general evaluation of your heart. So those are the 2 things that those are my extended answers to those 2 questions. Now, the question that you asked, can running improve life expectancy? It's again a question totally up in the air, because I feel yes. Because people say you run. There's a saying in the running world, right? You don't run to put more life or more years into your life, but to put more life into your years. So the question is whether you want to live till 100 years old, completely bedridden for the second half of your life, or do you want to live up to 70 but still be healthy until the day you die? That is the question that we all need to answer ourselves before we take up some activity like this. But having said that, I think running does extend your lifespan, because I wish I could show an MRI that I typically show people about this triathlete when he was, when he had an MRI when he was 35, and then he had the same MRI taken when he was 70, as opposed to a 70-year-old sedentary person. You can see the adipose tissues, which is basically the fat that causes all sorts of problems for people, such as cardiac issues and everything else, muscular failures and all that stuff. Adipose tissues, diabetes, all of that. So adipose tissues are developed for sedentary people, and you can see for an active person like a triathlete or a runner or a long distance runner, you don't see that as happening as much, and that definitely extends a person's life. Now, whether or not a marathon causes a problem, like I was mentioning earlier. If you have a resident or a pre-existing cardiac condition, and you stress it by running a marathon fast or do some high-intensity training or something like that, yeah, you might unfortunately cut your life down a little with cardiac arrest. But the chances are, I mean, for that happening, are much less compared to you extending your life through exercise and through running.
Oh, great. Thank you. That was good insight for all of us to see how going to sustain. Next question is for Appu. Do you recommend any separate insurance for sports?
I think I am really ill-equipped to answer this because I don't have any insurance per se. First of all, I didn't understand the question. Maybe I'm not understanding it properly. But I think this is one question probably I'll have to get back to later. I tried finding a little about this because per se, I think in India we don't insure anything.
I agree, but the UTMB is insisting for an insurance before we get in. That is.
See, that's. Can I answer that?
That's different.
Yeah, please, yeah.
See, those are, I think that insurance only takes care of your needs in case, you fall down and you're stuck somewhere in the race and you have to be evacuated. Those parts, because that's a major cost, and the organizer doesn't pay for that cost and it is just to cover that part that insurance is done. It is not a life insurance. It is only that insurance only takes care of your expenses of evacuation from the place where you are lying to a hospital. I think that's all it does, because if you otherwise the cost could be higher if you don't have an insurance.
Doctor, I think this background of this question would be because in Oman we do not get a support for sports related injury. Many companies are not covering. So if you can go for an insurance outside, maybe that could be the reason of this question, that whether any sports related injury can we take an insurance so that the support, because otherwise you have to shell out a lot of money. We had one experience of person who had a fall injury and had to shell out everything from his pocket. So maybe that could be one reason for that question.
Yeah, in that case.
Yeah,
sorry. In that case, I think probably you should have some sort of coverage. Because but running per se is not as dangerous. Probably a cyclist would, if you're a cyclist, then definitely get an extra insurance. If you're running in places where you think that you will have accidents and stuff, yeah, probably you should have a separate insurance.
Okay. The next question is
also,
yeah.
I'm sorry to extend that, but and also running injuries. I mean, Appu can testify for that for sure. Running injuries are probably less severe in general than any other sport injuries. Like if you have an injury from playing badminton, it's probably a ligament tear. So as opposed to running injuries are probably more chronic injuries that if the runner has some patience, can actually be fixed without a whole lot of medical intervention. So that being said, I mean, many countries do have hazardous sport insurance, and that actually means, if you're really in a hazardous sport like like surfing or major like rock climbing or something that is really dangerous, yeah, then you have an insurance for that that covers that. But otherwise, yeah, running itself, I don't think that there is a requirement to say to get a sport insurance coverage for running. But like Appu said or Vijayan said, like if you are actually running in dangerous places or in dangerous conditions, yeah, maybe it's a good idea.
Good. One of the good questions coming to you, Doctor. It's is running bad for knee, and what is the effect of road running on the knee?
Yeah, so there is a couple of studies that were done in UK. They looked at large series of runners, 6,000, 7,000 runners, and they looked at the incidence of arthritis compared to non-runners, and they also looked at incidence of joint replacements in runners versus a whole subset of other people who were in running. So they found there is absolutely no difference in the incidence of arthritis or incidence of joint replacement. So it's both the groups had comparable results. So when you look at all these studies, you can certainly say that running is not bad for your knees. And the other thing is we should understand how the knee works. Our knee has a small covering called the cartilage, and this cartilage has no blood supply. So essentially, the nutrition for the cartilage comes when your knee moves. So when your knee moves in in a cyclical way, the fluid pushes nutrition into the cartilage. So more you move, the better for the knee. The only thing is you shouldn't cause too much strain on it. So somebody who's so that's what probably happens to footballers and basketballers. A lot of jumping, a lot of falls, that kind of stuff. So that doesn't happen in running.
How many runs do you suggest in a week? Like, what is kind of a mileage? Like, can I do 40 kilometer or should I do only 20? And what pace? For training, I'm not talking about training for a specific marathon, and general training to keep myself fit.
Problem, that depends on what your as if you're a beginner, probably 30 to 40. I mean, to start with 20 to 30, go to 30 to 40 in like a month or two. I think generally, if you have, even if you don't have an event, I think you should try to maintain around 40 to 50 kilometers a week, because from there it's easy to step up your training for an event. If you're running only 20 and then try to step up for an event, that becomes really hard.
Okay. What are the physique requirements for running, Vijayan? Can you answer it? And it can be complemented by Ramesh also.
Physique requirement, just 2 legs, I think that's all.
I like it. So what do you
Even
think
that
of? Sorry. Come
Well,
on.
it's just, I don't see any physique requirement as such, because as Appu said, I think you'll have to be, be careful when if you are slightly overweight or such things, or if you have other issues as of, heart issues as far as Ramesh was saying, but otherwise I don't think there is any physique requirement for running. I think I don't even consider running as a sport as such. Is it a sport? Is a question that we should all ask ourselves. I don't think it's a sport. It is just what our forefathers have been doing, and we just continuing. The only thing is we are doing it as a part of a discipline, or for participating in the events. But otherwise, running is just the joy that you get out of just pushing yourself, or running. I don't think I don't even consider that as a sport as such. It's so there is no requirement as such. Is the best I can answer that. Anything else, Ramesh, on this?
Well, I would say, yeah, initially when if you want to start running, and running is generally an essential component in almost all sports. So, running as an activity is not a sport really, because it is basically something that we are supposed to do, just like brushing our teeth, because it's required for us in a way. But when we consider it beyond just as a recreational or just a physical healthy lifestyle activity, when you are actually trying to set a goal or reach a goal that you have set, such as beating a time or beating a distance or something of that sort, then there may be other requirements physically, other demands physically that come your way. Like you might want to strengthen your core, you might want to strengthen your running muscles per se. So in that sense, you might need like a little more core workouts and general cross-training workouts and stretches and stuff that you need to do. But if you're starting to run, if you're a beginner, all you need is, like Vijayan said, a pair of legs. But even that, if you can see, are optional, because
yes.
we have people with no legs who run in prosthetics. So all you need is a mind, really. Like that is probably the only thing that you really need.
Yeah, how does strengthening, stretching, and releasing work for regular runners?
That should go to Appu probably.
I think, are you talk? So when you say strengthening, it's like when you run, your muscles, lower legs, they do get strengthened a bit. So when you talk about strengthening, there is one strengthening your legs, there is strengthening your core. So there is the famous Kenyan, not the coach of the Kenyan runners called Com O'Connor, who coaches the school that is produces the maximum number of Olympic gold medalists in distance running. And he says, core is everything, legs are just a distraction. So when we talk about strengthening, I think it should first focus on core strengthening, whereby you should really focus, strengthen your core, and that kind of stabilizes everything. Core is what holds your legs, holds your hips, and from there, once your core is strong, the chance of injuries are quite like, it's like rowing on a stable boat and rowing on a very unstable boat. If your core is strong, it's like a very stable boat. Everything else can function properly. And as for stretching, stretching is very controversial. There are a lot of studies that say that stretching doesn't do anything, but personally I feel that I find benefits with stretching, probably because muscles, once you start using a lot, like once you start running a lot, you find that they bulk up, your calf, your thighs, and they all bulk up, and with that the bulking up decreases the flexibility, and stretching probably improves that flexibility to a bit, to an extent. Sorry.
Okay, good. Just a question. I think one of you can take it. This one day I'm doing a workout. Let us say I'm doing 100 push-ups and 20 lunges, 50 lunges. Shall I run the same day? Is it allowed, or is it okay to run on the same day?
I would say yes.
Yeah, Vijayan. Okay. Yeah.
There's no if you are able to, go ahead and do it, because there is a theory that I mean, there is this cardio or strength debate that goes on in the running and strengthening world. Which comes first is the question. The fact is, both are equally good and both are complementary to each other. So if you actually can pull it off, doing it both on the same day is the best thing you can do, because you get a whole day to recover after that. Because if you actually alternate between running and strengthening, then on different days, the problem is your body doesn't get time to recover, or your muscles don't get time to recover. Basically what happens, I mean, Appu is probably a better person to explain this, but basically what happens when you work out is you are creating micro tears in your muscles, and it's actually the rest and the recovery time that makes your muscles stronger. So it is not when you exercise, but when you actually rest that you're building your strength. So the rest is probably even more important than the actual workout itself. So ideally, it's best to cram all workouts on the same day and then take a full day rest. Is probably the best way you can actually train yourself better.
Okay. Now, any specific advice for diabetic persons while running?
I think
Doctor
if you're
perspective.
if you're diabetic and if you're on, say, insulin or if you're on a heavy dose of medication, when you start running, that's obviously going to burn through some of your sugars. So you should be careful about your dosing and stuff when you start running. Also, if you're planning to do long runs, I think you should adequately take in nutrition so you don't go hypoglycemic. And probably when you're running a full marathon or something, you should probably talk to a doctor about skipping that day's medicine or reducing that day's.
Okay, so I have one more question for you, doctor. It's how long does one have to train by Maffeton method before seeing any results?
6 months to a year.
Okay, thank you.
And
It was quite good.
And that's see, I did Maffeton long back. I started Maffeton very randomly. I found this book recommendation by somebody. I started Maffeton. I bought a heart rate monitor without any GPS and then started running, and I found that it was terrible. So I was running at paces that were almost as people used to walk beside me. That was my stage when I started off with Maffeton. And the thing was, my diet didn't really improve. It was long back before I had any serious advice on all this. And so I found that the advantage was very little. Maffeton works best if you follow his diet plan along with the training plan, and you have to be very, very disciplined and extremely patient for Maffeton to work.
Okay.
But I think I mean strictly not a Maffeton method, but I did train for at the heart rate levels for about a year or so. But the benefits are there. But it takes there's a lot of patience which is required for you to get trained at that heart rate level, because at the heart rate level that Maffeton recommends, you would be you would be walking. I think even if you do a 5K, you would be walking that distance. But then slowly your endurance builds up, and it definitely helps you. And I think it also keeps you somewhere down the line. It also keeps you injury free. I don't know whether because of the heart rate or the pace, but I mean, touch wood, I mean, once I started the Maffeton, the heart rate training method, strictly not Maffeton, but heart rate training method, I've not had any serious injuries I mean, for the past 4-5 years, thankfully. So I think it works. It works heart rate, but as Appu said, for totally going, I mean, the diet and everything, I have not yet tried, because it's very difficult for me to follow that diet.
So if I were to run a marathon, what should be my weekly plan? So can Mr. Ramesh explain it?
Well, it's a good question, because it depends on your level. Like if you go to, ideally, if you go to highhidden.com, right? I mean, that is a very good site for runners of all caliber levels. As in, like, they, he has a plan that fits if you're a beginner, if you're an intermediate runner, if you're an advanced runner, any of those. So bottom line is, there is no single plan that fits you. I mean, fits everyone, just like the shoes. The fact is, if you are trying for your first marathon, then ideally you should build up your mileage. I mean, you give it a good 6 months plus to actually run a marathon. If I share my experience of running a marathon, when I first signed up for a marathon, I hadn't even run. I mean, my marathon was about 6 months out. Yeah, I think it was about 6 months out. I had not run more than about, I wouldn't say 10 kilometers, not even 10 kilometers. And that was the maximum I had run until then. And then as part of my training for the marathon, I ran a half marathon and a 20K race. I'd never run a race before that. I had just signed up for a full marathon. I had never run a race. I didn't know anything about what a marathon distance was going to be, or anything about hitting the wall, or any of that. But so bottom line is, it is possible. It is it is not required that you actually graduate from a 10K to a half marathon to a marathon. You can run a marathon. I mean, in a span of 6 months or maybe a year. But the fact is, you have to be disciplined with your training, and the training is ideally for the first marathon that you run. You don't look at your time. You don't look at your at what your finish time or what your capabilities are going to be. You just try to finish the distance, because you have to respect the distance that takes you through multiple emotions, especially past about 30K. So ideal plan would be a few days of short and medium fast runs, and then one definitely long run. So 3 to 4 days of training, maybe ideally four days. You build up those 4 days with a mileage starting with about 20 to 25 kilometers a week to you can go up to about 50-60 kilometers a week by the time you run the marathon. Maybe even more if you are disciplined in your build up. You can do 70-80 kilometers, probably even more if you're adventurous that way. But ideally, you can stop at about 70 to 80 kilometers a week to run a marathon. That is more than sufficient. But you should have run at least 1 or 2, ideally, long runs of 30 to 32 kilometers. I mean, that is an absolute requirement for you to be able to complete a marathon, because that glycogen depletion and the whole experience of going through that is required for you to finish that marathon. Otherwise, that'll be the first time you experience that during the race, which will probably just shut your body down, and your recovery will take longer. You might actually get tired of this whole thing called marathon running. So ideally, you should run ideally 2 or 3, but at least one long run of 30 to 32 kilometers. But even that, you have to build up. I mean, you have to start with maybe about 15 kilometers or 12 kilometers long run on a weekend to move up like 10%, 10 to 15% a week. So build it up. So over 6 months, you can definitely do that and build it up to most of the training plans you see on the net are probably about 18 weeks, which is 4 months. So that assumes a slight base for you already, about 20 to 25 kilometers that you already run. And from there, you can build it up to a full marathon in about 4 months. So that is the typical.
Good. That's nice to know. Now, very important thing is heart rate. How do we train on heart rate, and what is the importance of heart rate in running? And how it can impact the pace. So I think I put all the questions in one go. All 3 of you can put us light on it. So we'll start with Dr. Appu being the heart rate.
Yeah, so basically when you run faster, it kind of activates something called the flight or fight response in your body. So when you run really fast and your heart rate goes up, body, like genetically, what happens is your heart rate goes up when you're in a flight or fight. When you're attacked by somebody or you have to run away from something, that's when your body heart rate goes up. So what happens is during that time, the adrenaline goes up, body starts burning more sugar. So higher your heart rate, more sugar is being burned, and that causes you to hit a wall much faster. So that's where even people like Mafetone, the training helps. Where it helps is it helps your body burn more fat. A body has more fat reserves than sugar reserves, and so that helps you sustain faster paces for longer periods. So what is the ideal heart rate? There is a lot of variation in that, but anything probably say around 60 to 70% of your max heart rate is probably where you should be. Mafetone says 180 minus age, which also works pretty well actually. But then there are guys who recommend even lower heart rates for training. Could you repeat the second part of the question?
One is heart rate, and what is the impact on the pace with respect to the heart rate?
if it's about heart rate training, what is its impact on pace, or is it
Heart rate
what
training.
is?
Heart rate. Once we reduce the heart rate, you have to reduce the pace also. So how do we get
Yeah,
trained?
so initially what happens is you reduce your heart rate, your pace goes down, then your body slowly adapts, and what happens is you get faster at the same heart rate. So keeping your heart rate low, your pace slowly goes up. And then what happens is when you take higher, when you go faster, your heart rate doesn't go up as much as it did before.
Okay.
Because and so that helps body burn more fat and helps you sustain or hitting the wall, helps you from hitting the wall quite early.
Well, I'll just give you the figures. Like, say, probably when I started this heart rate training, the 10K timing was around about. It would take almost 1.5 hours to finish. The 10K run in probably at that the Methadone recommended heart rate, which is 180 minus age, which is what I follow. But then over a period of time after my training for about 1.5 years, it actually came down and I could do a 10K within that heart rate limit in under an hour. It could maybe 50-55 minutes. But the problem is issue is it's a lot of patience. You would like I mean, if your normal pace is say around 6-minute pace, and then you suddenly switch over to heart rate, you'll find people overtaking you, and but you don't have to be worried about that. It'll if the pace is if the pace is an issue for you. It was not an issue for me. So slowly things got better, and now I can run. I mean, I would say I'm not very fast, but at probably 6-minute pace for a 10K under that heart rate. So the benefits are there, but it's a long-term benefit.
Okay. Vijayan, you have one more question with all of us saying that how to train our mind for long distance trail running. That you ran 24 hours. How did you train your mind to stay on 24 hours on your legs?
I don't know. I actually don't know how to answer that question. But generally, what I do is I like to run alone while I'm on my trails. I think about it's a nice time to think about all that you have done probably in the past 6 months, or and your little things at office, at home, or things. It's a nice time to be engrossed in your own thoughts. And I actually don't find an issue with passing time in that manner, and just look around whatever is out there in the nature, and as such, I'm not a since I don't run very fast, so I just managed to spend a lot of time thinking about what I've done probably for past 6 months, or even about my training runs. I would be thinking probably if I'm running in April in Malnad, I would be thinking about the training run which I've done in somewhere, and probably that pushes my thought. Okay, this is how it is, and probably will take me up that hill. Probably when I was running Oman, I was thinking about whether I've not done a training run of that nature. So once you come back, you always think about that. Yes, you need to have a training run of that nature. These are thoughts that push you for the I mean, the time passes off just like that.
Okay. Ramesh, I have one question for you. That is, will the train learning experience help us to be much better on the road running?
Trail running per se, well, I mean, trail running does exercise, I think, more muscles than road running. So yeah, I think it does. It's just that, typically what happens though is trail running may not give you the anaerobic um, improvement that much, because it only gives you the muscular improvement. So it probably helps you with hills a little more, even regular road, but not in terms of pace, but in terms of injury prevention, and as well as if you want to pick up your strides and you want to train your faster things, your muscles are probably better toned, and you probably get less. You're probably less prone to injuries if you do more trail running, because your feet muscles actually get, and probably overall your muscles get much better workout when you're on the trail, all your muscles. Whereas on the road, you're probably constantly getting a repeated motion of the same kind of muscles. So you're probably just ignoring or kind of sidelining some of the smaller or insignificant in road running terms muscles that way. So that in that sense, trail running does, I think, give you an improvement in road running stuff.
But I have one more question with the same lines, that is it okay to run with a trail running shoe on a road?
I would say no, only because, not that it is a problem. It is not a problem for you, but it's a problem for the shoe, because the shoe won't last long. The shoe is not, I mean, trail shoes are not meant for road running, as in, like, they're not meant for smoother surfaces. With that, it'll actually wear out much faster than in trails, because in trails you have these uneven surfaces, and it is actually made for those uneven surfaces, because you see, like, sort of a spike-like structure for the trail running shoes, and those actually last a lot longer on the trails than on the roads. You would find it ironic, but it is true. Vijayan can probably certify for that.
Yes, you can't use. I mean, you can use your worn out, trail running shoes for the road. But if you are using your fresh, trail running shoes on the road, the lugs would easily go off, and then you can't use, because for trail running the primary thing you require is the grip, and those grips would go off, and then it'll be difficult for you to use that for another trail run. And then plus, I think the sole is slightly harder than compared to a road shoe. I mean, at least that's what I use. I mean, I use for the road, I use a Vibram, which is a very light and a soft kind of a sole, whereas the trail sole which I use is slightly kind of a harder sole. So it's slightly difficult for me to carry that long as you run on the roads.
So then, if trail running, I just would like to touch upon the nutrition and hydration part of it. What all things do you think that we should carry while during the run, and pre-run, what should we eat, and post-run, how should we take care?
Well, I don't follow a strict regimen on that, but then see, what I do is generally, if I run, what I do is I sip water every 2-3 kilometers, sip of water a bit, and whenever I reach probably an aid station where there is a lot of food there, I do have whatever food is available, whatever carbs or whatever is available there, and then go on. But as far as, I mean, it's as such, it's not a very you don't have to I don't specially eat something extra for in preparation for a trail run, because after all it's a long run. It's the whole day you'll have to keep yourself hydrated and having enough of food, but don't overeat, because I've had an experience of overeating, and then I couldn't move myself. So overeating is not good, but have little nibbles of food all along as you go along.
Okay. Dr. Appu, would you suggest any quantity of gel or energy bar or BCAA during the trail running and even marathon also?
So there is no quantity per se that, it's not like something that's going to kill you if you have too much or but it can cause stomach problems, and so it's how much you're used to. If you're a guy who takes gels constantly during your practice, and you'll probably be able to handle the amount of gels better. There are guys who use 7 to 8 gels during a full marathon. There are guys who use 4 or 5. There are guys who don't use any at all, and many of them have similar times. The thing with energy expenditure is, I think, what some studies have shown is you burn around 350 calories an hour when you're running. If you're running faster, probably a little more. And so, say if it's a trail run, if you're going to burn something for 10 hours or 12 hours, you should probably replace it according to that. So one gel is around 100 cals. So even that won't give you enough. If you take a gel every hour, even that won't be enough in terms of energy replacement. In probably a marathon, when you're talking about 3-4 hours, so say 1200 or 1400 or 1500 cals, if you have 4 or 5 gels, that replenishes around 500 calories, and that probably will get you over the wall or prevent you from hitting the wall. That's probably what it does. But per se, I don't think there is any quantity or any restriction on how much you can have.
Okay, we have got a lot of vegetarians in the house, so I would like to ask Mr. Ramesh that what could be the diet plan for vegetarians, and you can touch upon vegan also. Ramesh, you are not audible. You are not audible. Speak.
Probably you can come.
I think I think it's coming now.
Yeah, I think now it's no.
I mean, I have this theory that vegetarians don't eat any different. Oh, can you? I think. I think.
You're not audible.
So, well, I have this theory that vegetarians don't eat any different. Okay. Am I audible now? Can you hear me?
Yes. Now you're okay.
How about now? Any better?
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Oh, you can't hear me?
I think he has just maybe logged out and coming in again.
Can you hear me now? Is it better?
Yeah.
Okay, I just turned off my video and just want to see if that helps.
No issues.
Yeah, it's
okay. Okay, so I think what I was trying to say was in terms of a vegetarian's diet, it is in a way it is no different from a non-vegetarian. I mean, non-vegetarian itself is an Indian word. There is no word in the dictionary that such a word as non-vegetarian, but a meat eater, I should say, or a fish eater. A vegetarian is no different. I mean, from somebody who eats meat. It's just that it's a different diet choice in terms of what you eat. But all you have to focus on is the amount of nutritional elements that you get. So it could be, people always get worried about enough protein in a vegetarian's diet. I personally think it is a myth that we don't get enough protein, because the protein we get from the regular diet that we have, which is our pulses and our nuts and beans and everything else that we regularly consume, that's more than enough for our protein intake. Now, in terms of carbs, we definitely eat a lot. I mean, vegetarians do eat a lot of carbs. Vitamins, as long as we get enough fruits and vegetables, we get most of the vitamins. There is this dearth that we have, which is the B12 and a little bit of vitamin D that we probably won't be getting enough with pure vegetarian diet. So in that, we might have to supplement, especially B12. I think there is no plant source that is easy to get. I mean, there is some algae that you can find in some seafood in Japan or something like that. But other than that, there is no real vegetarian source for or plant source for B12. So for that purpose, you might want to supplement that with a pill. But otherwise, almost all vegetable, almost all vegetarian, vitamin sources are there in vegetables and vegetarian diet. There may be some that we don't have enough of, like zinc or phosphorus or some minerals that we may not get enough, but you can, I don't think it's a big problem. Zinc is probably a required element for long-term health, I think. I mean, Appu can probably testify for that. But generally speaking, vegetarian diet, if you stick to a healthy vegetarian diet, you're probably okay. It's just that you know, when we say vegetarian, we actually have a lot of non-healthy vegetarian food. Like we eat a lot of carbs, but we don't get enough protein or vegetables. We eat a lot of rice and you know, we eat a lot of probably chapatis and stuff, but we don't get enough you know enough vegetables and fruits. That is probably a wrong thing for us to do. So that is where we have to watch our diet, watch our protein source as well, like in terms of especially after a run, you should supplement your protein with a little bit of maybe if you're not a vegan, you're probably okay because you can probably take a chocolate milk. A chocolate milk is one of the best recovery drinks you can have because it has got everything in the right proportion that you need after a tough workout. Like you go for a long run, you take a big cup of chocolate milk. That is probably the ideal post-run nutrition that you can take. So that's my take on vegetarian diet and supplementing for vegetarians. But maybe Appu can extend that a little.
Thank you. Appu, I have got one very frequently asked question for you. How to handle cramps?
Yeah, good question. So, so first, how to handle cramps is first to see why there's the muscle cramp. So one thing is it can be dehydration. The other thing is lack of salt, but it can also be lack of energy. When the muscle runs out of fuel, you cramp. So some days, like say I'm in the operating theater and I operate for a long time and my hands cramp. So it's not because my hands have run, it's not because they're dehydrated, it's not because I'm dehydrated, or it's not because I've lost a lot of salt. It's basically that the muscles have run out of energy. So one thing is, if you're how could you avoid cramps is, one, you don't overtrain them. Most people get cramps during a race. Very few get cramps during their training runs. And so one thing is, you should control your race pace according to your training and not overdo it. The other thing is, hydrate well, make sure you get in enough electrolytes, and along with that you also get in some calories so that your muscles don't run out of energy.
Good. Second question is another common question: when to apply ice, and where all we can apply ice, and where we should not apply ice.
Where shouldn't we apply? I think all acute injuries, like any pain that comes suddenly, you can apply ice. I haven't heard of any particular place that you can't apply ice. And as long as you're not sticking your finger into ice for like 20-30 minutes suffering pain, you're not going to get any sort of, like, I think why that question of where not to apply ice is because of frostbite. You're not going to get frostbite by keeping an ice pack on your hand for 5 minutes, on your nose or hands or ear tips or toes for 5 minutes. You're not going to get frostbites. And when you keep an ice pack, you can keep it for 5 minutes, take it for off for a minute, keep it back, or you can do it every couple of hours or 4 hours or 5 hours. So any sort of acute injury, you can use an ice pack, and you shouldn't probably use heat at all. Heat is probably for chronic pain. So where people who have back pain for a long time or knee arthritis, they can use heat.
So can I ask you a supplement question to this? Like, if there is a swelling on my leg or on my ankle or some kind of a stretch pain I am getting, can I apply ice on that part?
Yes, you should.
Okay. So swelling, yes, inflammation is there. You mean to say that we can apply?
Yeah, I
One
think
more
if
question.
there is inflammation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. if there is inflammation, you should definitely apply ice. I think ice works as well as medication in most cases. Ice along with some sort of elevation, and I think as soon as you feel, if you come back from a run and you feel severe pain, you should apply ice, elevate the leg, probably give some compression bandage over it, and then if it doesn't go off in 1 or 2 days, then probably you should see a doctor at that point.
Okay. My second question to all three of you should be able to answer. Do you take a painkiller when you are running on a longer distance and if you happen to get a pain on the leg, knee, thigh, or anything?
I've never taken a painkiller for a leg pain, but I've taken paracetamol for a headache. That's probably the only thing I take, but I never take any medication for leg pain. Probably have tried sprays in the past, but I've stopped that also. Now, if ice is available, I apply ice. Otherwise, nothing.
What is Vijay's take on this?
Same here. I've never
So
taken
you
painkiller for.
recommend not to take any painkiller while running, correct?
I mean, I'm not qualified enough to say whether it's recommended or not. But then, I
You
don't
don't
know.
practice.
I mean, you enjoy the pain. You know, while you're running, there is a slight pain here and there, but then you enjoy it and just go ahead. That's all.
Okay, so I think Ramesh is still there, I think, or Ramesh has gone out. No, Ramesh is there, Ramesh has come back. Yeah. So I think you have spent a good lot of time, and I would suggest that all of you can just give one inspiration to all our runners to keep their running at this period of time and also to continue in the future. So I would suggest you all to take 1 minute and give them one word, one line, or one sentence, or a few sentences of inspiration, please. Start with Ramesh. Ramesh, are you audible? Are you able to hear me? Okay, we'll start with Vijayan.
Yeah, nothing but stay safe. I mean, run within the perimeters allowed, and wait for the lockdown to be over to get onto the road and start running again. Stay safe,
Yes.
first and foremost.
Okay. Dr. Appu?
I think, yeah, whatever is recommended by your governments, I think you should do that at this point. Try to stay with it. I mean, obviously, you have to stay safe, but at the same time, I think it's important as runners we keep moving, do something, run inside your apartment, move somewhere, do core exercises, take this time to stretch, start some strengthening, do whatever you can, keep moving. I think exercise per se helps in prevention of disease or not having a severe form of disease. So keep doing something which is within what is allowed, and stay safe. Yeah.
So, Ramesh, are you able to speak now?
Yeah, I hope I am. I'm sorry, like I had a little network issue.
No, audible.
Yeah, okay, good. I had a little network issue, teams. So, you know, basically, all I want to say is, you know, this is an unprecedented time, right? I mean, none of us, not even our parents, have seen something like this. So it is something that we are not prepared. We were not prepared, and we are still not really sure the scale of this or the extent of this as to how it's going to turn out or pan out in the long run. It having all those unknowns can put a lot of pressure on our everyday well-being, on our psyche, on our families, on our general health. So running or doing some kind of exercise is probably not just an escape but a necessity at this point, because this is probably the way we stay sane, the way we keep our minds less depressed in a time like this. So while running in an apartment, inside the apartment or inside the house is okay, there is a problem. I mean, because of all the twists and turns that you have to do. I mean, you have to be very watchful of, highly careful of how you do it. I mean, you should do very slow, and you should also make sure that you don't do it for more than like 30 minutes or 45 minutes inside the apartment, because that it does put a lot of pressure. It's almost like playing shuttle badminton or something like that, where you're constantly turning and twisting your ankle. So it's always it's important that you don't create an injury, because this is probably the wrong time to get an injury. God forbid. Let's all stay healthy and stay safe as it is, because as they say, doctors like Appu might be deployed for doing other things than taking care of runners at this point. So we probably need to be mindful of that. So let's all be careful and let's all be safe, but at the same time stay active, because staying active improves your immunity. So we keep this invisible enemy out of our hair. And one lighter joke I have about running. I don't know if any of you would consider it a complete letdown of your impression of me. It's about this joke that I just read. Is running bad for your knees? And the answer is no. I don't take her with me when I go for my runs. That's it. That's all.
Fantastic. And I would like to personally appreciate and thanks each one of you. When I started this thread of having one discussion for all our runners in KTMMR, KTMMR is such a small gathering RK has started, and it has become a huge number of about almost 150 plus active members running and making their active life very simple, and then they want to make it a better runner in the days to come. A lot of runners started with 5K and they ran 42K. We have a lot of runners and we have recognized them during the last Muscat Marathon, after the Muscat Marathon. So all the work was done by RK, and he consistently pursued people to move out of their bed, out of their couch, out of their sofa, and rearrange the sofa and run inside the house and pose photographs. So we have a person like a lot of inspiration from RK, and thanks a lot to each one of you for taking so much of your valuable time late in the evening and to spend time with us. And being a runner, I'm sure that you will never say no to share your thoughts. Anyway, I will request now Radha to come online and then a few words to close the session. And before Radha comes, I would like to thank my entire team, and especially Mr. Machu, who had made all those photographs and made it so interesting and lively. And the background, what you see, is also made by Machu. Raja, who helped me in consolidating. And there is a team which worked for KTMMR support team, which maybe RK will mention it. And over to RK to take it for the closing.
Thank you, Viju, so much. I should say that you are a sober version of Arnab Goswami. My God, tons of questions. How could you do this? And thank you, Ramesh, Vijayan, and Appu for the series. Of course, honored to have stalwarts like you in our panel of discussions. And I'm sure most of the common doubts of the runners have been cleared. And we are very much thankful to, especially to a runner like Ramesh, who has done Boston. Boston is always all of our dream, each runner's dream. And for me, it will be only a dream, because I don't think I'll be able to do Boston maybe in my next birth, because I started running when I was 55. No, it's only a dream. So in my next birth, I'll be starting early, so I can do Boston at that time. And for Vijayan, I have especially to tell you is that you will have a lot of runners from KTMMR next year, this year rather, for Wagman. So you will have to have some special slots for us. Normally it is in 10s, now it will be in 20s and 30s. And Appu, thank you so much for all those advices. And there will be many barefoot runners from Muscat, I'm sure, hearing whatever advice you had given. And thank you so much. And thank you very much to all the KTM Muscat runners who joined this, and those who have joined from outside also, especially from source of Cochin. Thank you so much. It was such a wonderful session. Thank you once again to Vijayan, Appu, and Ramesh. and especially to Viju and all those who have worked behind this.
Thank you. All participants can open their video and say bye or thank the panel, please. Now you are allowed to open your videos.
Thank you, panelists. Wonderful session. Very useful.
Thank you very much. It was very good session.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sajid.
Good job, Viju. Good moderator, Viju.
Thank you.
RK and Viju, many of these are Toastmasters, no less than Toastmasters, wonderful speakers. Thank you very much, panelists, for your wonderful information.
Sriraman is the one who was framing those sentences and words to captions for panelists.
Yeah, I'm the one who puts Viju into sentences. I give him sentences, capital punishments.
We would like to have
Viju,
comments, suggestions, all of you, for improvements.
Picture, all the panelists are still on.
Sorry?
You want to take a picture while the panelists are still on before they go to dinner and go to sleep?
It's almost 9:30.
Screenshot.
A screenshot we can take now.
But you are not visible.
Yeah, I'm not there. Yeah, I'm there. I'm very much there.
I know Robin Sharma says leave without a title. That doesn't mean you have to hide yourself here.
Today we had 61 members participating. That's a huge
Today
number.
we had almost 60 plus
Thanks,
members. Hope it was very helpful to all of you.
Madhur, you want to have your say?
Yeah, Madhur, please.
Yes, I have put my comments in the comment section. It was wonderful, very insightful session, very good, very useful tips, very good information shared, and special compliments to Viju for being a wonderful moderator. So we've seen you as MC today, we saw you as a moderator as well. Good job. Thanks, RK, for the initiative.
Thank you, thank you. In fact, there were a couple of people from Souls of Cochin also, but we could not introduce everybody. And we have a doctor in the house. I think, Vijayjit, you should open your video if possible, or are you on work? Krishna, I think Vishwajit is on the line, no?
Yeah, Vishwajit was there. I don't know whether he has left. Let me see.
I'm at work.
No, he sent a message. Yeah. His message is it.
Oh, his message is there. Okay, fine.
He is there.
I can, so I can see all of you, but cannot join by video. I think he is from office then.
Hi, Dr. Vishwajit.
Maybe he is in the office, I think.
Yeah, he cannot be seen.
Vishwajit is one of our sports doctor whom we consult for our health.
He is our in-house doctor.
He is in-house doctor. Roopsan, which one I was referring to? Roopsan, can you tell how many kilos you reduced after you started running? Because I took as a case study with them your name. Roopsan, can you speak? You can talk in Malayalam also, no problem.
Roopsan, Malayalam പറഞ്ഞ കുഴപ്പമില്ല.
ഞങ്ങൾ ഇംഗ്ലീഷിൽ കേട്ടോളാം.
I think his voice.
Roopsan സംസാരിക്കാൻ ചാൻസ് കിട്ടോ, ഒഴിവാക്കണ്ട. Translate for you.
He is mute.
He is on mute?
Yes.
No, Roopsan,
Viju, you have any doubt that
Viju,
you did a good job?
Sorry?
Viju, you can unmute.
You have any doubt that you did a good job?
Yeah, everybody is unmute. Everybody is unmute. I have not muted anybody. I think Roopsan on the left.
Do you have any doubt?
Might have something.
You have any doubt that you did a good job today?
You have to tell me that whether I did
You did a fantastic job. So why are you hiding like a criminal? Show your face.
My face is visible, no?
Or to yourself, not to the others.
Not visible.
Really? My webcam is shared with everybody.
Viju, we
Because
cannot
your
see
face
you.
is synonymous with the term among us.
In fact, I was suggesting Vijayan to join Toastmasters RK. In Kochi, there were a lot of Toastmasters. In fact, Ramesh is little related to Toastmasters.
He is a Toastmaster. What do you mean, little related?
No, his wife is a Toastmaster. So I told you the connection. He may not be 100% on to Toastmasters.
He is half Toastmaster and half doctor.
You can see many Toastmasters here.
Yeah, correct. Ilayaraja is also a person who completes. His name is now currently you can see as KTM Runners Muscat because he is organizing all our webinars.
Ilayaraja, wave to the crowd, no?
Ilayaraja, can you just put your hand up, please?
Yeah.
That is Ilayaraja.
Thank you. Can I take leave?
Ilayaraja is our IT department.
Very nice.
Supported by Viju.
Also one of the fastest and regular runners.
Yeah, one of the fastest. And he started working out now. He is doing dumbbell and something else also.
Yes,
That's why he's wearing sleeveless vest today.
Minimizing the run to 5 kilometer or 4 kilometer and doing some strengthening.
No, good. So
I think your camera is probably pointing
invisible. What's happening?
Sorry?
Earlier, even 5K looping was difficult for us. Now we are running inside home.
Yeah, we need to move it to outside home. It will take some more time for us.
Yeah.
Viju, where are you?
I'm here. I'm not appearing in your.
Where is the picture?
Don't tell me. Why are you telling me that I am not able to?
Viju, we cannot see you.
Hey, I'm.
Viju, you were visible in the initial session. After that, you have not been visible.
Now?
Maybe some network problems for
No, still not.
Don't tell me.
This is exactly what we are saying, RK, to him. Network with us. Why are you hiding?
No, you all enjoyed, no? Without my visibility also.
I just wanted to add one point actually regarding this. Actually, initially I thought I didn't expect that we will be getting much of detailed answers from the guest. Actually, it was like more surprise to me that each and every questions are answered in detail and with like I was expecting like 1 point means, and they have given me like 4 points for each and every questions. So that was very good, and even I thought that it finished very fast because I didn't know that the time went very fast. Actually, I was thinking it was looking like that to me.
2 hours went off very fast.
Yeah. It was very.
And we agreed to the time. We started at 6 o'clock and we finished the session at 8 exactly, like a Toastmaster session.
Yeah, thanks to in fact Appu, Ramesh, and Vijayan. They gave a lot of insights, as Ilayaraja told. Especially on injuries, we had a lot of problems, and all our runners are going through tough times. And how to run barefoot or not, that was the biggest thing which we could clarify today, and how we can enjoy it. And thank you. People will be hanging around.
You want
for
to take
some
a
more.
final? The panelists would like to take a final call, final take on the indoor running. Somebody had posted in KTMMR group that your muscles don't stretch enough. There'll be a lot of load if you run indoor and all. Is that a fact?
You can ask them. Ramesh and Appu is there. They can answer you.
Dr. Appu could probably before signing off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So indoor running is definitely more strain. One, most of you have slippery surfaces. You're going to take very tight turns. It is more strain on the joints and muscles when you run indoors. And the other thing is, so basically with indoor running is we are trying to maintain our fitness. You're not trying to improve or get trained for a marathon. So just do 45 minutes to 50 minutes or whatever you can inside the house without looking at your pace, watch, all that, just to maintain your fitness till we get out of this. If you're lucky enough to have a compound, or if you're allowed to run in a compound, the better. But if you don't have that, and if you have only the indoors, this is your only way out. The other thing is, if you're allowed on stairs, you can do stair climbing once a week or something.
Thank you, doctor. You know why Viju didn't ask this question? I had asked him to ask this question. So he asked me to ask this question, saying that you're the one who wants to avoid running, so you ask this question.
Viju recently did half marathon inside.
Yeah.
I know. I
So Viju, this is for you. Be careful now.
Yeah. Now I'll do short distances. But switching without running.
No, they're saying be careful. They're not saying don't run.
Yeah, there are other workouts also. I mean, you can do, there's this thing called 7-minute workout, which you can download an app for. And that's actually a high intensity workout. I don't know if high intensity is that recommended at this time, but still it actually is completed in about 8 minutes. All you do is 30 seconds of really intense workout like push-ups or planks or jumping jacks and stuff like that, and then 10 seconds of break and 30 seconds again of another workout. So it's in a sequence, and you can complete the whole thing in about 8 minutes, and you're done. You can probably, if you can do like multiple of those, even better. And it supposedly, like, I don't know what their measurement strategy is, but they say it is equivalent to a long run. I don't know if that's true, but there are some people who believe that. So from a fitness point of view, it's definitely a good thing to do.
Yeah. In fact, I
Ramesh, what is the name of the app?
7-minute workout. There's a bunch of them. I mean, there's a lot of 7-minute workouts. Just download any one of them. I just downloaded the one with the highest rating. That's it.
Okay. What was the name? Can you just type on the chat if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure.
But I was doing like last couple of days I didn't run. What I did was I do some 100 squats, quads, then take some push-ups, then do some jumping jacks, like 50, 100 or something like that. But it's okay. 7-minute workout app. Okay, fine, good. That helps a lot, in fact, for the muscles and things like that. You get to completely sweat out also here because here it's warm and hot at times.
That's true.
Good.
So Ramesh, you are welcome to come for the UTMB along with Vijayan and Appu.
See, I have a problem with trail running, which is, trail running race, that is. I love trails, but I don't like to run a race during a trail because I'm not a thinking runner. And for a trail runner, you have to be a thinking runner. You have to keep on thinking where you need to change your attire, where you need to change your nutrition, where you need to take your nutrition from, and you need to carry a light with you. Some places you have to dump it. You have to remember where your drop bag is. And you get lost. You have to watch on the trail. You have to be very careful about how you do all that stuff. And I'm not that kind of a runner. When I run, I just go. I can't, as I said earlier, I don't enjoy the scenery or anything when I run because I'm in a Zen mode. So because of that, I love trails. I love to run in the trails, but not as a race. Because for a race, you have to think too much. So that's my problem.
Yeah, when you are in a race, you'll not be able to enjoy the beauty of the nature. That is the right. You are
So
thinking about the cutoff.
Yeah, you have to think of a lot of things when you're running on the trail.
Yeah.
That's correct. That is correct.
I'm not very smart when it comes to running. I can't think.
Okay, other than running, you are very smart. Otherwise, we were just moved with your barefoot running and the pace in which you run. And the Dubai Marathon 3.04, 3.06, these and all I've seen only, my 3 hours I don't reach anywhere. Hardly 21 kilometers I reach. And I was just wondering when Vijayan told Vagaman can be an entry point. For 33 kilometers, I agree, but not for the 60 and 90. That is difficult. I think Malnad people can try. Malnad 50 can be tried, but last year was very difficult. 2019 Malnad 50K was tough.
Yeah.
Appu was there, no?
Yeah.
It was full of slash
Vijayan,
and Vijayan was there.
That depends on whether you get rain or whether you don't get rain. So those things are always there in any race.
No, but I thoroughly enjoyed that track. That was really good.
Yeah.
Malnad was really good. If that direction problems were not there, we would have completed 110 also. And that's why I stopped at 80. And one stopped at 80, all of us stopped at 80. Parvati, Appu, then Naushad, everybody stopped. In fact, Parvati wanted to join. She had got her own some problems. That's why she didn't join.
The thing was, I think even with the direction problems, I think that was a finishable race. I think we just at that point, I think we just mentally shut off it.
Yes. Yeah, Sriraman, you want to say something? Ask something.
Sriraman on mute.
No, he's self-muted. I opened it.
Okay, I just wanted to say one thing. You will have a lot of things to discuss on running now, but I want to let the panelists know that I'm not a regular runner and a regular trainer. But the quality of the program is so good that I logged in at 5:50 and I'm still here at 8:20. Such has been the inputs and information that came through in this program. So thank you very much for this insightful contribution from all of you.
Thank you, Sriraman. See, when I approached Vijayan first. So Vijayan told I am not a good speaker for a public speaking. I told, okay, let's do one thing. I'm going to call Ramesh also and we'll put Appu also. Then he was very happy saying that, okay, it's a panel, it's okay. Then I approached Ramesh. So Ramesh was immediately, he said, okay, tell me the date. So I was very happy that, it was RK mooted the idea of let's have something. So always I have a good, connect with Souls of Cochin, like or not, that's different. And then I asked Appu. He is one of the men who is very difficult to get, but when I approach him, he will never say no to me. So I told the other two and the RK that Appu will join, but only thing is time of his hospital we have to see because he is working in difficult shifts these days. So then I could speak to all three and differently, and then come back to there is a panel which worked, Ramesh. There is a support team which we support for the entire runners. We have made a support team who are runners basically, and then we floated them to give us some questions. So there, the beginners, you have seen the questions, you have seen that, 60, 70 questions are there. In fact, we could not go through everything. Some of them, I took it as little prioritized ones, and then we have to close at a time which is okay for everybody.
Right.
And then Sriraman was the one who was helping me with all those kind of how to release ads. And Machu is he's just gone. He's very busy man. So he was the one who was making those posters. And in fact, I liked the one which was Ramesh's poster, which is like a different candid position, a candid photo, which I think they clicked in Vagaman, if I'm right. Correct? No, Vipin would have clicked in the Vagaman. And the one which is of Vijayan's, because that was trolled. The Vijayan's, that photo like this, it was trolled in Souls of Cochin group, saying that cut off. Nahi means nahi. I was really, one thing, when I was at the estate, when I reached the MMJ estate, Appu, Vijayan was there. So we reached at 7:25, and Vijayan and Vijay Kumar and our Abhinav was running still to reach there. I told boss, Vijayan is here, come fast, you get in. So they both got it. Then Vijayan kicked us out from there, saying that now there is no time, now you start running now itself. So it was really good. And sometimes, that's really good, the way he does the briefing and the way he takes things very personally to see people enjoy when they come to Vagaman. Personalized effect, many people are there, we all being running a lot of race directorship, but I've seen him very personally he take, and everyone in the source. But Omar couldn't attend because his friend's sister passed away in Dubai with a COVID. Otherwise, he was supposed to join us. He says that his friend's sister was in Dubai. She's only 34 years of age, and she passed away at Dubai due to COVID. He was telling, I don't have words to say that how I enjoyed the Souls runs in Cochin, this Vagaman. So I'm sure that is the experience with Souls of Cochin. And I use your T-shirt here and run. Some people make fun of me saying that you are Cochin fellow, you are Cochin fellow. Okay, Arke, you want to say something?
Vagaman is the only place where I have run 2 times. Normally I run a place only once. So Vagaman is the only place. Last time also, and in future also, I can say that Vagaman calling. And this time there will be many people from KTM Muscat runners who will be running Vagaman as well as Malnar. So you can find a lot of Muscat faces on the hills of Vagaman, Ramesh and Appu.
Correct. Vagaman 60 last year when I ran, no RK, it was, I thought, okay, I can manage, but 90 this time was, especially that from 28 to 56, oh my goodness. Especially that going through the Tangalpara and coming back, no? It's an amazing loop. I'm sure that Appu would be enjoying that, because when I reached 56, I don't know in what situation I was. Somehow we just again start from there. Then the climb up starts, the biggest, one of the tallest mountain which we climb up.
Yeah.
And the facility they are providing is amazing. The food, the tasty food, the ever-smiling volunteers. Oh, that is amazing.
Kilometer you have something. Good. Yeah. Okay then, so I'll just sign off.
Okay then, bye bye.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you. Bye bye. See you in Vagaman, Ramesh and Appu.
Yes.
We'll see you next year.
Sure.
See you next year.
We'll start 2021 there now.
Okay. See you next year.
So 2021 we'll start there again.
Yeah.
Chalo.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay then. Bye.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.
This conference will now be recorded.
Hello. Bhaji, this recording button, what should I do now? That is still recording. So should I do the pause? Okay.